Ben has built himself quite a financial empire by being the voice of not just the Daily Wire, but being the voice of the Zionist movement. And what I found very interesting is, maybe you did as well, and Jen, I'm sure you would think anything that comes out of Mr. Shapiro's mouth is a crock of bullshit.
I hope I don't have to hear it. Are you going to play
this
it?
But this is a big one, because we are very big supporters of JFK, what his message was, what he died for, and who ultimately had him killed. And we have our thoughts. And of course, when Mr. Shapiro makes a public statement about the JFK files like this, it really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Conspiracy theorizing that's become incredibly popular on the right these days. It was popular on the left, and now it's become increasingly popular on the right. The kind of, let's just ask questions. We'll ask, who really killed JFK? Wink, wink, nod, nod.
I have a few thoughts. If he's going to be talking about it, how about you guys? I got a few ideas.
I can't with him. Like, I just can't even.
Well, do you have any evidence of the thing that you are presupposing? Well, no, I'm not making any accusations. I just know I don't believe the story that I'm being told. I know not to trust the authorities. Like, well, that's fine, but do you have like any evidence? Like evidence, not just supposition. I said, well, you're part of it, aren't you? You're part of it. The reason that you're so defensive about all this is, I don't care who killed JFK. I mean, I do, because it's really interesting, but I noticed that the calendar says 2025 and he was killed in 1963. And so my opinion about who killed JFK has about as much relevance as who killed William McKinley, or James Garfield, which is to say, not an enormous amount.
I mean, talk about giving away the game.
I can't with him. He's just.
Does he give JFK a bad name?
He is a horrible. He's, to me, like just a cleaner cut version of Shmuley. These are people that are an abomination of Judaism to me. And I'm I'm an atheist. I've never, said otherwise, but I was raised by Jewish learned people. And this guy is an abomination of that. These people want to be willfully ignorant. They want Jews to stay ignorant. So, that to me is anti-Jewish. Because the one thing that was always sort of indoctrinated in me, like consistently, was that Judaism was always about learning and studying and becoming and being the light. Like that was the whole thing. So this guy is not that. So yes, he is a shitty version of a Jew. Zach, thoughts?
Yeah, well, Ben Shapiro, where to even start with this guy? I mean, he put out some 30, 40-minute, Israel-Palestine explainer video. It's just replete with misinformation. The guy doesn't have the basic facts right. He's not very well versed in the history. He regurgitates lies and propaganda and mythology. And look, ultimately, he is of the opinion that basically Zionism is Judaism and Judaism is Zionism. That if you oppose Zionism, you're somehow anti-Semitic. And as we all know, throughout the history of the past 140 years of the Zionist movement, you were much more likely to be a Zionist if you were anti-Semitic. In other words, anti-Semites were attracted to Zionism. This was the case with most prominent anti-Semites in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The leader of the anti-Semitic movement in Hungary, Istotzi, was a raging Zionist. The German journalist Wilhelm Marr, who coined the term anti-Semitism, was a raging Zionist. Arthur Balfour, the most famous Zionist in history, who penned the Balfour Declaration calling for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, he was a raging anti-Semite and sponsored legislation to keep Jews out of Britain when he was prime minister in 1905. And to this day, the most anti-Semitic people in the United States, people like John Hager, who founded Christians United for Israel, a 10 million member strong organization, the biggest organization, Zionist organization today in the United States, is the Christian Zionist organization, the Christians United for Israel. Yep. And John Hagee is his founder. And in 2003, John Hagee published a book saying that God sent the half-breed Jew, Adolf Hitler, to planet Earth to push the Jews of Europe to Israel, where they would then bring about the second coming of Christ and thus usher in the new kingdom. We're talking about the most prominent anti-Semite in the the most prominent Zionist in the United States today is a raging anti-Semite. The same is true of Buchanan. The same is true of all these these megachurch pastors who preach Christian Zionism. It's very embedded and deep in the religion, right? That chapter 12, Genesis chapter 12, Genesis chapter 15, Deuteronomy chapter 28. There it says it right there. God promised Israel to the Jews. We got to support Israel. And they're just raging. They believe all this anti-Semitic stereotypes of Jews. They're the financiers of the world. They control the world. They're the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes, right? I mean, it's these, and they also believe in ethnic purity, which is also why they love Zionism, because Zionism also believes in some kind of racial ethnic purity. And so it's the racists and the neo-Nazis and the anti-Semites are attracted to Zionism. And if you go around Europe today, all the right-wing parties in Europe, the AfD in Germany, the National Party in Britain, go to France, same problem with Le Pen. The people who are the most anti-Semitic, who have the anti-Semitic roots, whose parents and grandparents either supported the Nazis or belonged to the Nazi party themselves, these are the people supporting Israel today.
Yeah.
These are the types of people. And it's even worse because I live in the panhandle of Florida, and even though this is not what I would consider to be, I mean, it's a religious area, sure, but it's not a backwards area. But you've got a lot of pockets, especially in the deep South, South Carolina, most Georgia, Central Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, East Texas. When people are kept down and education is at a premium for only people who have real money, it's easy to control people whose lives have basically revolved around the church from the time that they were young. And if you are a Pentecostal preacher, if you're any denomination within the Protestant faith, and especially if you're evangelical, this is what you're taught, much like there are segments of the Jewish population that are taught from a very young age that everything's about Israel. It's of vital importance. It's where the final battle of good versus evil is going to take place, and it'll happen in your lifetime. I can remember, it's amazing how quickly things change. Because I remember when Sarah Palin was running as the VP with John McCain and was talking about, I think it's going to happen in my lifetime. And people thought she was a kook. But we've really accelerated to a point.
She is a kook. Two things can be true. Okay.
I'm not debating that point.
I'm just saying those are not mutually exclusive points.
But she did write a book going rogue, and it was a bestseller because, any book could be a bestseller these days. I do think it is kind of amazing in many ways that we are informed about what's going on, but indoctrination is very real, and it really seeps into a person's identity, to who they are, what they believe. If there's one thing that I can't stand seeing, probably more than anything else, is when they do the splicing of the Israeli flag with the American flag. I think that's a desecration of the American flag. And I believe in the red, white, and blue. I do. I don't believe in the people who run our country. That I know. But when I see that, I'm reminded of the jingoism, the nationalism, but especially the theocracy that many people desire. And the reason they desire it is because they want to prey on people that don't have a lot going for them. It's a lot easier when you are preaching Christian nationalism, Christian Zionism, because that's all they really have. And that's why the John Hagees of the world are as powerful as they are. Do I think he believes half of what he says? No. But it gets
he's a capitalist. He's a capitalist. I lived in San Antonio for 6 years. I am very familiar with Hagee. I have seen him out. He dresses like a pimp. He fleeces his people. He doesn't believe in shit but money. That's what he believes.
I saw a black Pentecostal preacher who was decked out with all the bling, says, "You got to give me money because this is how you get to heaven." I'm thinking, yeah, we can look at this from a distance and think this is insanity, but to the people that he's preaching it to, they just believe it. And I wish it wasn't like that. I wish we were not that country. I don't know where that schism happened. I don't believe for a second that that's what Thomas Jefferson or James Madison were talking about when they were writing the Declaration and the Constitution, respectively.
I just saw it. I just saw the Declaration in person this weekend. I've seen it at the archives, but I saw in Philadelphia. Anyway, I digress.
No, you're right. I think that those founding documents still have a lot of value, but the power structure in our country has manipulated people to the point in which you can look genocide right in the face and figure a way to justify it. And that's a scary place to be. But I also believe that there is an uprising that's happening against Israel right now, and it's going to come to a head because of things like what happened earlier today, because it's not going to stop. They have no reason to stop. They don't believe the ride is ever going to end. I believe it is going to end. How quickly? That's going to be up to us. Your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. I think we're seeing, we're witnessing. What's that famous phrase? Decades happen. Decades can go by when nothing happens, and then weeks can go by and decades can happen. It's more than a few weeks. It's probably going to be a few years, maybe even 5 or 10 years. But we are witnessing in real time the state of Israel just completely melt down and collapse.
Yeah.
On so many levels, right? You could start off with the level of Israel's place in the world. On October 6, 2023, those of us who paid close attention understood that Israel was a pariah state. But for the vast majority of people, Israel was a state among the states, participating in the Olympics. An Israeli passport is valid in most countries in the world. It's actually a decent passport in many places. It gets you to Europe and the United States, more or less visa-free. Israel, so at the level of international acceptance, what have we seen? We've seen the ICJ pursue Israel's now on trial for genocide at the world's highest court. Israeli leaders, Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant have ICC, International Criminal Court, arrest warrants out on them. They can't travel to most countries in the world anymore. And this is just the beginning, right? And then you have Israeli soldiers, they can't travel anywhere anymore because they all posted their own war crimes on TikTok. You're seeing the impunity crumble in real time. You have countries now declaring Israeli travel documents invalid. I believe it was Guanajuato, I think. This is just the beginning, because people forget legal processes do not take weeks or months or even years. Sometimes they take many, many years. So we're witnessing the very beginning stages of a decades-long process in which Israel's place in the world will completely unravel. That's at the international level. But then at the domestic level within Israel, the society is collapsing. If you open up the front page headline of Yediot Achronot, the most widely read daily in Israel, open up that paper this past week, the headline would read "Constitutional Crisis," because Bibi Netanyahu now, in order to preserve his power, his coalition cannot collapse, because then he's going to wind up in prison, because he's right now on charge. He's facing charges of corruption, bribery, and breach of public trust. And there's a fourth one as well now. But so he can't leave power. So what is he doing? He just fired the head of the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security services, the person in charge of prosecuting him. So the country's in a state of turmoil internally, leaving aside that, so internally, it's also suffering. The economy is also suffering. There's no tourism. Moody's credit rating has dropped 2 to 3 notches in the past 18 months. The Supreme Court is under major threat by the government, which is basically trying to cancel its power. So checks and balances are gone. The state is turning authoritative. A $23 billion Intel plant was canceled. They've lost foreign direct investment. The high-tech sector is suffering massively. And now Israel's, you hear these stories every day. You see them on TikTok, you see them on Instagram. Israelis are pariah individuals, because everyone knows that 95% of Jewish Israelis have been supporting the genocide. And so everyone knows if you meet an Israeli Jew, there's a 95% chance they are pro-genocide. So people know that. And Israelis themselves are just pariahs. Everything about the state, the society, the culture is turning pariah. And
I wish it happened here. I need it to happen here.
They live in their own bubbles, so they don't even know. They're kind of unaware of it even.